Wow, what an introduction. What a room. It's good to be home here. I will say it is a real honor to be back on campus and to mark this important moment in the history of Harvard Business School, and to be part of this summit. I just want to take a moment to thank all of the people who worked so hard to make this possible. It is a grand event. You know I speak for everyone in this room when I say that this is an institution that we cherish. The memories, the experiences, and the skills that we gained on this campus help guide us both in our personal and our professional lives. This is where we learned how to problem solve, how to build teams, and how to lead. This is a unique institution with a proud tradition and a strong future. And I want to thank President Faust. She's an inspiration to all women and to all men. And our own leader and inspiration, Dean Noria. Thank you both. Thank you both for making sure that Harvard Business School continues to produce the leaders and the scholarship that will define our nation's economic future. The mission of the Harvard Business School, we all know it, is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. And each of us here today wants to make sure that more of those leaders are women. Now, this conference comes at a perfect time as we find ourselves engaged in an important dialogue about balancing family and work and about ensuring our place in positions of power. And if I have one underlying message today, it's that we belong. We belong as the CEOs of major corporations and in the highest levels of government. We belong at the helm of universities and financial institutions. We belong because we are uniquely suited to excel in those positions, to manage global organizations, and to provide leadership and strategic counsel at the highest levels of corporate America and government. Now, the opportunity to serve as part of the President Obama's cabinet and as a member of his economic team has really brought that home to me. Let me tell you about some of the voices that are around the table when we're developing economic policy. There are women like Ursula Burns of Xerox that Drew mentioned this morning, and our own Sheryl Sandberg, as well as Penny Pritzker. And as you know, Sheryl and Penny are going to be both speaking later in this conference. These women advise the president and the cabinet on job creation and export growth strategies. And I'll never forget my first cabinet meeting. I'll never forget it. Walking in, Secretary Hillary Clinton, Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, Janet Napolitano, she's the Secretary of Homeland Security, and you can be more secure because she's there. Ambassador Susan Rice, Labor Secretary Hilda Solis. You know, these are powerful women working to solve some of the most pressing challenges facing our country and the world. But I'm proud to be a part of that team because these are women who are supportive of each other, sharing counsel and hosting some very fun girls' dinners. You know, women belong a lot of places where people didn't always think we belonged. When I came to Harvard Business School in 1975, women made up only about 11% of the student body. But from the moment I stepped on this campus, I felt that I belonged. I think this was actually true of many of us here today. And sometime during my second year, I realized that I was taking courses mainly focused on manufacturing. It hadn't occurred to me at the time that this was a male-dominated industry. I came from a manufacturing family. We talked about it at the kitchen table. It was in my blood. And I've spent my career buying and investing in manufacturing businesses, and now helping to develop manufacturing policy for the country. Women belong in manufacturing. One of the best parts of my job as SBA administrator is I travel all around the country. Every week, I'm meeting small business owners. And I met W50. She's an engineer, and she's president of a manufacturing company in South Carolina. Her company sells electronic components to Boeing and to the Marines and the Air Force. She is creating good U.S. manufacturing jobs, and she's building capacity in America's supply chain, something HBS is focused on, right, Professor? And I've also had the pleasure of meeting Sarah Blakely, an entrepreneur and the founder of Spanx. We all love Spanx, right? Well, I won't ask how many are wearing Spanx. We'll just keep that. Sarah and I recently participated in a discussion hosted by CNBC, and one of the other panelists was a guy who was a venture capitalist. And his underlying thesis was that when he invests in a company, he wants the management team to be solely focused on one thing: killing the competition. Those were his exact words. So Sarah just looked at him and she said, "I totally disagree." And then she explained, she said, "When I first cut the feet out of my pantyhose to make a pair of white pants look more flattering, my goal was not to kill the competition. It was to create a product that women would want." She was focused on quality, creating value, and from that premise, she built a multi-billion-dollar brand and created thousands of jobs. So we need more entrepreneurs like Sarah and Rebecca if we are going to realize our nation's full economic potential. We need a more inclusive view of entrepreneurship, one that expands the entrepreneurial playing field to more women, more minorities, more rural and industrial communities. That's how we create jobs. That's how we ensure that America remains globally competitive. Doing this comes down to two factors: access and opportunity. Today, women-owned businesses are one of the fastest growing segments of new business in our economy. However, we know that too many women entrepreneurs face something we call the missing middle. This has nothing to do with Spanx. The missing middle refers to the fact that while women-owned firms are increasing in number, challenges still exist in scaling their operations. Today, women-led startups are receiving only about 6% of venture capital dollars and less than 10% of angel investments. However, we know that women make great startup leaders. Look at women-led private tech companies, and Drew mentioned some stats on this morning, but here's another one. According to research, these businesses, when venture-backed, bring in 12% higher revenue than their male counterparts. And let me give you an example from here in Massachusetts. Women own 31% of the businesses in this state, yet they're capturing only 8% of the receipts. We can see the same trend across the country. Clearly, the number of women-owned firms are growing, but they still need to grow in size and get more access to capital to compete equally. Well, that's something I'm proud to say I've been able to influence during my time at the SBA. For example, the SBA has a $100 billion portfolio of loan guarantees. And research shows that women and minorities are 3 to 5 times more likely to get an SBA loan than a conventional bank loan. This year, we provided counseling to more than 500,000 women entrepreneurs and small business owners. And across the SBA, we are focused on making sure that more entrepreneurs of all backgrounds have the tools that they need to grow their business, to bring new products to market, and to create good jobs. Now, on a personal note, there's a lot of debate around how women can maintain full and balanced professional and personal lives. And I know Cheryl and many others are going to talk more about this tomorrow, so I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I did want to share one story. You know, I often say that what you learn in the business world is not really applicable to our roles as wives and partners and mothers. We don't use 360-degree feedback reviews in the Mills household. But many of the lessons we learn as moms can be effective in the workplace. So let me tell you about one. It's called the irrational no. You know where I'm going. When I started in private equity in the 1980s, which was actually before the industry really even existed, I was working on a deal that was not going particularly well. My sons were young at the time. I have 3 boys. And after a long day of work, my evenings went a little like this. Can I have another cookie? No. Can I watch more TV? No. Can I stay up another hour? No. So when I walked into the negotiations the next day, I was sleep deprived and not in a pleasant mood. And rather than my normal approach, which would have been to compromise and look for common ground, I employed the same tactic that I had used with my boys. So the other side started making unreasonable demands, and I just said, no, no, no. So they were taken aback. They walked out. When they returned to the room, they said, okay, we'll do it your way. You know, I told this story to Ben Shapiro, whom I'm sure many of you will agree was one of the best professors at Harvard Business School, right? So he asked me, when do men learn the irrational no? And I paused and I said, I think they're born knowing it. So for those of you who are thinking about taking time off or who are currently taking time off to start and build your families, you should know that when you're home, you're developing and honing a new set of skills, including what one of my colleagues calls her mom voice, that may prove very valuable in the workplace. Now, one of the other areas I want to touch upon today is the question of women and power. When I was at the beginning of my career, power was not something appropriate for women to want. However, the times have changed. And for many of us, this question has long been settled. We are perfectly comfortable in positions of power. As I said, there are literally hundreds of reasons why we are uniquely and perhaps better suited for these positions, but I'll point out 2. They happen to be the 2 Republican senators from my home state of Maine, Senator Collins and former Senator Olympia Snowe. They are pragmatists, they are solutions-focused, they know how to build consensus and get things done, and I would argue that if there were more senators built in their mold, Washington would be a more effective and productive town. It's up to each of us to determine where we want to make our mark and how we want to use our skills and experiences to make a difference. Each of us needs to make our own choices about the balance that makes the most sense and how and if we pursue positions of power. But when it's right for you, step up, make it happen. And I wanted to tell you a quick story about one of my make it happen moments. This is from my time in the public sector, which is something I really encourage all of you to pursue at some point in your career. I promise you, it will be one of the most rewarding experiences you will ever have. My story starts when I was first nominated to be SBA administrator. It was December 2008. President Obama had just been elected. I was flying to Chicago for a press conference in the Drake Hotel. The president was announcing my appointment, as well as Ron Kirk for trade representative and Ray LaHood for transportation secretary and Hilda Solis for labor. And they had all been politicians, so while this was a huge day for all of us, they were a little bit more used to these things. We stepped out onto the stage, and there were about 50 camera crews. The lights were blazing. It was hot. I was nervous. And I immediately thought, I'm going to pass out. Even my husband, who was watching on TV from Maine, later said, I thought for sure you were going down. So we took our places behind the president, and this is, you've seen this is what they call in Washington the potted plant position. Right? So you stand there for about 20 minutes, and when it's your turn, you head to the podium to speak. And the president opened his remarks with a topper. Now that's Washington speak for something new that's added just before the announcement. And that day, it was about the auto industry. Now you have to remember the economy was in shambles at the time. There was a real legitimate fear that the auto industry would fail and that the entire economy would crumble. And the president talked about small businesses and suppliers and surrounding communities who relied on the auto industry, and I thought to myself, you need to get a grip. This is not about you. This is about the jobs and the livelihood of millions of hardworking people. You know what needs to be done to help fix this. You belong here. This is your time to contribute. You've prepared for this during your time at Harvard Business School and in the private sector, and it's time to step up. So I stepped up to the podium, and I accepted this enormous responsibility, and I have had the most extraordinary and challenging experience of my professional life. So my point is, it's okay to have fears, but we can't let those fears hold us back or keep us from stepping forward or weighing in. When the choice is right for you and you know you can have an impact, step up. And always remember, you belong in the room because this is our campus. Those are our boardrooms, our negotiating tables, and our positions of leadership. It is where we can and will thrive. As I said at the beginning, the mission of the Harvard Business School is to educate leaders who make a difference in the world. And all of us here today have accepted the challenge to open the doors of leadership to more women. Because just as inclusive entrepreneurship is the driving force in growing our economy, inclusive leadership is what will make our society more productive, more innovative, and will lead us on a path to a more peaceful and a more prosperous planet. Thank you.